What's going on, my fellow basketball sickos? The conference finals are officially set. We've got the Boston Celtics taking on the Indiana Pacers in the East, and then in the West, we've got the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Dallas Mavericks. And honestly, these matchups could not be any more different. In the East, we have the Celtics, who 99% of people, probably even 100% of people, had them making the conference finals at least. And then there's the Indiana Pacers, who sort of came out of nowhere in most people's eyes. And then also, it's a matchup of the first and second best offenses in the NBA, so we are more than likely in store for some high scoring games. On the flip side, in the West, there's the Minnesota Timberwolves, who a lot of people didn't have coming out of the first round, much less beating the defending champs in the second round. Then there's the Dallas Mavericks that hit a hot streak towards the end of the season after some trade deadline moves, much like the Pacers did. And this series will be the complete opposite because it's a matchup of two of the league's best defenses. So these two series will be entirely different, but let's take a look at each series and discuss some of the key factors for each team. So starting with the Eastern Conference between the Celtics and Pacers, like I said, this is a matchup of the number one and number two offenses in the league. So I'm expecting some high scoring and some fast paced outings in this series. It seems like the entire world is already writing off the Pacers, and I personally think they're getting supremely overlooked. While there's obviously no doubt that the Celtics are the better team and should win this series, I still feel like it's not smart to write the Pacers off this early and just yet because of how unpredictable the rest of these playoffs have been. And we've seen time and time again, we've written off a team and they end up winning the series or end up winning that game. But with that being said, what are some of these key factors for the Pacers to be successful in this series? So the first thing they need to do is they need to win the battle of the paint. This includes rebounds. It includes both offensive and defensive rebounds. It includes points in the paint and just overall rim protection. So Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam, and even their guards they need to attack the glass, especially the offensive glass, and try to abuse the Celtics with the fact that they're missing Kristaps Porzingis. And speaking of being without Porzingis, they need to constantly put pressure on that rim and on the paint on offense because there's really nobody back there to protect the rim. So right now the Celtics are relying on just great on ball defense to not allow people to get into the paint. But the Pacers have enough ball handlers and enough people that can attack off the dribble and get to that paint and put pressure on it. And you've got Al Horford back there who's trying to protect the rim. So that could be a key factor where they could find some success and be able to gain an advantage. The second thing they must do is they must win the turnover battle. This is something that gets overlooked in a lot of basketball games because a lot of times the turnover battle can tell us a lot about who won the game and how that game played out. So the Pacers need to win this and buy as many turnovers as possible and try to create as many extra possessions as they can. They have never really been a high turnover team all season, but neither has the Celtics. So again, they need to try to do their best to win this by limiting their turnovers on offense and trying to create some on the defensive end because I think Boston is good enough to afford to have more turnovers than the Pacers and still be able to win these games just because the talent level advantage and how well rounded, how deep their roster is, and just like I said, how much talent they have on that team. So they can afford to lose this battle. But I think in order for the Pacers to be successful and to really push this Celtics, they're gonna have to win this battle. So like I said, they must win the possession battle, and that starts with rebounding and turnovers. And then lastly, the third thing that they must do is Tyrese Halliburton has to be ultra aggressive in this series. When he is on the hunt for shots, this team is 100 times better than they are when he's not. He cannot afford to be up and down like he was against the Knicks. So personally, I would like for him to get up at least 20 shots a game, somewhere around there, because it just adds a whole other element to their offense and takes their offense to a whole new level when he is scoring 25 plus points a game, plus getting all the assists that he gets. So I'm looking for him to be super aggressive and to, like I said, hunt shots for 48 minutes or however long he plays. And then on the Celtics side of things, it's a lot more simple for them. They just have to play to the standard that we expected them, and they will simply win this series. The only way they lose this series or even get pushed in this series is if their level of play drops or just does not rise to the occasion and to the level that it needs to rise at. So for their key factors, the first thing is the matchup of Derek White and Drew Holiday on Tyrese Halliburton. If these two were able to slow down Halliburton and make him be inefficient or even prevent him from getting up the volume of shots that I think he needs, then Boston will sleepwalk through this series. But if not, and they allowed Tyrese Halliburton to get comfortable and to get off and to be able to pick his spots and what he wants to do on the floor, then they could be in some trouble. And then the second thing they need to do is they need to establish a paint presence without Porzingis being in the lineup for the first few games or however long he ends up missing in this series. It's going to be key that they establish a paint presence and find ways to score in the paint because they have plenty of guys that can attack the rim and score around the rim. So they need to do that in order for them to really be successful and really use their advantage. I don't think it's the best idea for them to get into a complete shootout with Indiana, because that just means they are not using their size and their athleticism, which is a huge advantage for them. And that means that you're just getting in a shootout where, in any given night, one team can shoot better. One team's role players might show up and make 6 threes, and out of nowhere, and next thing you know, you lose a game. And then the last factor for them is their defense must step up and must come to another level that I know that they can do. This is an obvious one, but their defense has not been great throughout these playoffs, and they are about to play the best offense in the league, so they better raise their game. This is a step up from Miami and Cleveland offensively. It's not a guarantee that they can just outscore the Pacers in this series like they have in those past 2 series, so they must be better on that end of the floor if they want to make sure they win this series. But other than that, this series will simply come down to whether or not Boston does not play up to the standard that we know they can. If they don't, and it's proven that they really need Porzingis and that they really miss him more than we thought, then they could be in for an absolute dogfight, because these Pacers are scrappy and are led by Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton, who are playing some really good basketball right now. So now let's move over to the Western Conference Finals that I think will be the complete opposite of the East, in the sense that these are two of the league's best defenses clashing. So I would not be surprised if it's some ugly basketball to the average fan and just the average viewer, but to me, it will be really entertaining watching these games and watching these teams have defensive battles, and watching these coaches and these players try to figure out how to get good looks on the offensive end and how to create some consistency on that end. And like I said, while the defenses will be more than likely be what dictates this series, there are some key factors for each team to be successful on the offensive end, and or at least have some sort of success on that end. So let's start with the Mavs. The first key for them is they need to get some motion and some pace on offense. Every time they get a chance to push the ball in transition, whether that's on the pass or with the dribble, and to get the defense on their heels, the Wolves' defense on their heels, they must do it, and they must find a way to push the pace. And this may not only be in transition when I use the word pace and motion. They need some more motion and some more run some different actions in the half court to get the defense moving and to get it shifting. They cannot rely on ISO ball with Luka and Kyrie while everyone else spots up, because the Wolves defense is just too good at loading up and helping and making it hard on star players to get quality shots and get the shots that they want out of isolation. So I'm looking for the Mavericks and Jason Kidd to put Luka in some more off ball actions, whether that's some down screens or cuts or whatever they need to do to get him into. I would like to see him in some post up actions where he can just catch it and make a quick move with whoever they decide to guard him with. And then I'm also looking for Kyrie for them to run him off of some screens, to let him curl and catch it on the move. That way he's instantly got an advantage and got somebody on his hip where he can just attack quickly and make quick decisions. And speaking of Kyrie Irving, he's my second key factor. To me, he has been the most important player to this team during these playoffs. He has upped his defensive effort, and it seems like he is just galvanizing this team and leading this team by example. And even in the locker room, it seems like this team has really bought into him and want to win for him and win with him. But in this series, he will have to showcase his offensive ability that we all know he is capable of doing. It's clear to me, and I think it's clear to most people, that Luka is not 100%. And while the OKC defense is good, well, actually the defense is great, it is not on the level of this Wolves team. So him being hurt might show itself even more in this series, unless he has been able to kind of heal up over these last few days, because they have had some days off. But if he can't be as effective as we expect him to do and as he usually is, Kyrie is going to have to step it up, and he's going to have to raise his game to a different level. And I would not be surprised if he goes way up in usage rate in this series and the shot attempts and everything like that compared to the Thunder series, because they will need him to, and I think he will seize the moment and be ready for that. And if Anthony Edwards, I don't know if y'all see it, if he was telling the truth in his post-game interview or whatever, when he said he was going to guard him, I hope he was telling the truth, because I would love to see however many games this series goes. I would love to see them two battling for the duration of the series. Then the third thing they need to do is they need to make a concerted effort to attack Rudy Gobert. They need to bring him up in the pick and roll as much as possible and attack him. I assume he will play that drop coverage. He's always kind of done that in his career. So Luka and Kyrie need to be ready to shoot the pull-up three or the pull-up mid-range shot, especially Kyrie. Luka's jump shot is not necessarily the best for a pull-up jumper, especially when you have to do it so quick. And then the other thing that I could see Dallas doing, I could see Jason Kidd doing, and that we've seen teams do in the past, is going with a small 5-out lineup to expose Gobert, that like I said, that we have seen many teams do to him when it comes playoff time. The question would obviously be whether or not that they could hold up on the glass or on the defensive end and whether or not their offense and the production they're getting on that end is outweighing that. That's something they're going to have to deal with. But I think this is something that they will have to look at some point in the series, and I think they should look at it at some point in the series. And then for the Timberwolves side of things, their first key is they must play downhill in transition. The Wolves are not a great half-court offense. I think most people would agree with that, and the numbers would back it up. We have seen them struggle at times in both series versus the Suns, and especially in the Nuggets series, who are nowhere near the defensive team that this Dallas Mavericks team is. So they could struggle even more, and it could be highlighted even more and more exposed that they're not good on that end of the floor in the half court. So they need to avoid this as much as possible and get downhill in transition every chance they get. They need to attack the rim and put pressure on this Dallas defense to have to sprint back every time there's a rebound, a loose ball, a turnover, anything like that. They got up, and even out of times where Dallas scores, they need to get out of the net and go, because that's where they could be successful and find some advantages in that sense. Second thing they need to do is they need to attack the switches. When they do get in the half court, because that's something you can't avoid, especially in playoff basketball, they must attack these switches on Luka and Kyrie. Luka, obviously, because of the simple fact that he is clearly not healthy and moving as well as usual, and that is on top of him already not being a great defender. He has been trying and been asserting himself on that end of the floor, but he still is not a great defender just with his mobility and things like that. But obviously he's hurt too, so that adds on to it. Like I said, he's been able to hold his own in the series versus the Clippers and Thunder, but Anthony Edwards is a totally different beast than SGA, Paul George, James Harden. It's just a totally different type of player with his explosiveness and his quickness and athleticism. And then beyond Luka, they need to hunt Kyrie as much as they can. And again, Kyrie has been great on that end of the floor, in my opinion. That's been his biggest impact on this team, has been what he's been doing on the defensive end. But if they can find ways to get Ant posted up on him, or get McDaniels posted on him, or even somebody like Kyle Anderson, they need to take advantage of that as much as they can. Because like I said, he may be able to handle himself when he's out here on the perimeter just because of his quickness and his quick hands. But they need to try to get him in the post-up situations where there's a bigger offensive player on him, and try to take advantage of that as much as possible. And then lastly, it's something simple. They need to continue making the extra pass and trusting each other. They have been really, really good at moving the ball all playoffs and passing up good shots for great shots, which is part of the reason they have been able to be so successful. So no matter what this Dallas defense throws at them, because we know they will throw some different looks at them, they need to keep making the right play and keep trusting each other and making an open shot for an even more open shot. And like I said, just keep trusting each other that the role players are going to make shots when they need to make shots. So I think it's safe to assume that both of these defenses are going to show up and show out as they have in the previous two rounds. So the series will come down to which team can establish some consistency on the offensive end, and which team is able to get their stars in position to get the shots that they want, and then obviously which team's role players show up and make some big shots in big moments. But I think we're in for a great conference finals in both conferences. Obviously, like I said, people are writing off the Pacers and saying the Celtics will sweep them or gentlemen sweep them, but I don't think it's that simple. Personally, the Pacers will for sure go down swinging, and even if they do get beat in 5, there will for sure be some really good, really entertaining, high-scoring, fast-paced, close games in that series, regardless of the duration of it. And then out west, honestly, I could see this series going 7 games, and it can go either way. I really think it's a coin flip at this moment. It's going to be a defensive slugfest. I do know that, and it's going to be some ugly, physical, defensive basketball that defensive nerds like me will enjoy. So, like I said, we got 2 fun conference finals series ahead of us, and I cannot wait. Thanks for checking out the channel. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out some more of our content.